Episode 4 of All About Adelphi is sponsored by the Adelphi Racing Club. The Adelphi Racing Club is a partnership in every sense of the word, not a syndicate, and our members are treated like partners, not investors. If you're interested in joining a group of like-minded individuals, like yours truly, and having an interactive ownership experience, we are the right fit for you. Adelphi offers a variety of partnership options, including yearlings, 2-year-olds in training, private purchases, and claiming options. Join the club today. There's information on the bottom of the screen to get in touch with racing manager Matt Cutere. And now, let's start episode 4 of All About Adelphi. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of All About Adelphi, right here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining me in this special episode as we will have a detailed conversation with the very successful jockey that rides partially for the Adelphi Racing Club, Trevor McCarthy. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. We greatly appreciate that. Also, smash that like button, which will tell YouTube this is a great show, and also hit that notification bell so that you know when new content will rise on the HHH Racing Podcast. And boy, do we have new content coming up for you as the Breeders' Cup is only a week and a half away, and we are going to have 6. That's right. Count them, 6 live shows just on the Breeders' Cup themselves. You do not want to miss those shows, so please make sure you hit that notification bell. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. You can see at the bottom of the screen at H Kravitz, and we'll go ahead and there's also a scroll we usually have on the bottom of the screen. I don't have it up right now. H Kravitz Horse at gmail.com. Again, H Kravitz Horse, spellings there on the bottom, at gmail.com is the way to get in touch with me. You can listen to this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. So check out those listening platforms as well. 2 other quick items, especially for those of you that are partners of the Adelphi Racing Club. We have fantastic power picks. They're tips of the day. It's basically a tip sheet. Look below the video player for information. It is a month-long subscription. It's only $15.99. Here's the best part. We have 2 blowout editions for the Breeders' Cup, and there's no extra charge for that. It's only $4. That's right. $4 for 2 huge blowout editions on the Breeders' Cup. We're going to cover every race will be on there. We're going to have ABC grids for you, pick 4 and pick 5 players. We also are going to have spot plays and price plays. This is an opportunity you do not want to miss. Check out below the video player for information about our power picks. And also, we have a wonderful website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Please check all that out. All right, before we bring on our wonderful guest, Trevor McCarthy, let's bring on my co-host from the East Coast and the Saratoga Special, Mr. Paul Halloran. Paul, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, Uncle Howard.
I'm doing good. Paul, a little loud perhaps on the mic. I don't know if you want
to turn it down
just a little bit there. Paul, we're going to bring on Trevor here in just a second, and I'm really proud of everything that Trevor has done. He's really had a fantastic year. We're going to get into that. I know you cover Saratoga quite a bit for the Saratoga Special. That's a very tough beat to break in, for sure. I believe Trevor called it the Super Bowl of beats. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, he really, and he paid his dues, Howard. You know, he broke in Maryland in 2011, and I believe he made the move to New York right around 2020. I think it was right before or during the pandemic. But, you know, that room at Saratoga, you know, you could go in there with a blindfold on and just tap a jockey on the shoulder and get a great ride, and he has really held his own. And, we'll talk to him about it. But, Howard, those of us who bet the races tend to pay attention, to little details. And when I think of Trevor, I think of a guy who rides his horse to the wire all out every time. Again, within reason. I'm not talking about a horse 20 lengths behind, but there are guys, and there are great jockeys who, they know they're not going to win, and all of a sudden they lose that second place to third, and it's bad for the owner. It's certainly bad for those of us who have him second to the exacta. Trevor is a guy that I actually believe he's similar to his brother-in-law Dylan in this regard. He rides to the wire every time, and I think he's terrific. I have an affinity for guys who work their way up the circuit. He started in the Mid-Atlantic. I write a lot about the Mid-Atlantic, and I'm really happy we're having him.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I can't give a better introduction you just did right there, Paul. So let's bring him on from the New York area. We're really excited to have the one and only Trevor McCarthy. Trevor, how you doing tonight?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Trevor, we got a lot to talk about, obviously, in a relatively short amount of time. We do want to talk about your background, of course. We have some video to show as well about some great rides you've had recently and some wonderful wins. Then, of course, we also want to focus on the Adelphi Racing Club and talk about some wins you've had for them and your relationship with all the wonderful people at Adelphi. Paul already touched on it just a little bit, but Trevor, if you can just expound how you got started very quickly into racing and where you started your first mounts.
Yeah, listen, I started from racing about being around my father, who was a jockey for a long time. He rode for 22 years, and he retired back in 2002. After his retirement, he began training, and I followed him as a small child, watching him ride, watching him train, and being around him as a trainer, spending a lot of time in the barn around horses, learning the horsemanship. And he only lasted training about 8 years, and between 8 and 10 years. And after that, I was kind of like, man, I just before he retired, I was just starting to get on horses and ride race horses. I always rode ponies and maybe jogged the race horses in the barn, but I was never getting out on the racetrack with the race horses. And I was 13 years old. No, I was 13, and I started getting on the horses, and I was galloping at Fair Hill, and he would pony me around the track with my pony, and that's where I started to get my feet wet. And then he ended up retiring shortly after that, and he put me in a great spot, and we were very friendly with the Grand Motion family, and I was able to work there for 4 years, and learned. That's really where I blossomed, and I learned so much from that man, and I owe a lot of my career to him. He's been a huge supporter, and look, I mean, it's just been a great relationship.
Yeah, Fair Hill's a really cool place. I've actually never been there, but I've heard great things. And Graham Motion, we're gonna talk about Graham Motion a little bit later. I'm sure you know why with a certain win that he had, Paul. But Paul, before we get to your first question, your father Michael McCarthy, pretty darn good jockey. How about 2,907 career wins for Michael McCarthy? I remember watching your father ride. Paul, I'm sure you know as well. So I'm sure you had great tutelage there. Paul, go ahead with your first question for Trevor.
Trevor, I wanted to kind of jump to the present, if we could, if we get away from the past. You got your first grade 1 win, I believe, was on Highland Chief this May at Belmont. Is that correct?
Yes.
And now, the circumstance, were you just not at Keeneland the weekend of the Sycamore? You opted to stay in New York. I know Johnny V rode in the last race. Any insight there, and what might be happening going forward?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That's a pretty wild story. It was pretty devastating, but look, more Graham, he was pointing for the Joe Hirsch, and we had the option to ride Gufo or stay on Highland Chief.
Oh, wow.
So now I worked Gufo 2 weeks before the Joe Hirsch, and I had worked him previously. I actually won on him. I won the Kent Stakes on him in Delaware as a 3-year-old, and now I worked him before he won Sword Dancer at Saratoga. Joel was out sick, so I filled in, and then I ended up working him again 2 weeks before the Joe Hirsch. And Christoph said, listen, there's a really good chance that Joel is going to be at Keeneland that day. Would you want to ride Gufo? And I said, well, I'm already dedicated to riding Highland Chief. I know Graham is putting for that race. Let me, just double check with him and make sure he's still running. And at that time, he was still running, so I couldn't ride Gufo. I told him I'm already taken. I'm sorry. So now, I would say the day before entries, I get a phone call that Highland Chief is sick. He come up with a fever, and now I'm trying to get back on Gufo, and the mount is already taken. Alvarado, took the mount. So now we ended up scrambling around, and Graham says, oh, how about, bye-bye Melvin. I'm going to run bye-bye Melvin there. And rumor was that Mott was going to run Channel Maker. So he said, well, let me just check with Mott because he was looking for a rider for Channel Maker. So Mott says, okay, you have the mount for Channel Maker. We'll go in the race. And this was the day of, 2 hours before entries. He calls back an hour later. He changed his mind. He wasn't going to run Channel Maker. So now we try to get back on bye-bye Melvin. And again, mount was taken. So we ended up sitting out the race, which was a tough one. But it just, wasn't quite meant to be. And after that, I was already committed to staying at Aqueduct that day. And I guess Johnny had worked him at Keeneland. And the owners wanted Johnny on the horse. And look, Johnny gave him an excellent ride, great ride. And it wasn't meant to be. So I wasn't too devastated. I was just I was happy to see the horse win and run such a great race and see him back in good form.
Trevor, I had the Highland Chief race up. Can you talk? Highland Chief is the 5 right here. I remember this very well because you son of a gun, knocked me out of the pick 5 along with a lot of other people. But I could not be more happy for you. I didn't look. As an experienced handicapper, Trevor, I really felt bad after the race because this horse had really nice back form in Europe, and I completely underestimated him. And of course, you gave him a perfect ride. As we see here at the top, mid stretch, they went very slow. Did you see? I'm assuming you saw Gufo, and of course the Breeders' Cup champion Yabir to your right here. At this point, go ahead and walk us through the race as we close it out, and tell us your thoughts in the final eighth of a mile here.
Yeah, look, we went so slow early. When we came to the middle of the turn, I said, well, I still have some horse, and my horse is a little one-paced. And if they're going to beat me, they're going to have to come and beat me. I'm just going to kind of make an early move, get my horse in a good rhythm, and, if they're going to catch me on soft ground, they're going to catch me, And
you were kicking away. I mean, it wasn't like a photo finish. I mean, you were kicking away, and it was great to see Highland Chief also win. And Paul and I catched very nicely on Highland Chief in the Sycamore at Keeneland, so that'd make you feel good knowing that even though you weren't riding that day, of course, but just to see Highland Chief win again must have been pretty cool for you to see.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I love to see Grand Motion win, and they're been so great to me. So I wasn't upset with them at all. I was a little bummed, but happy to see the team back winning.
Is he going to try for the turf, Trevor? Do you know?
I think they are going to shoot for it. I read something on social media the other day that I think they're going to take a look at that and point for that Breeders' Cup.
Oh, okay. Well, the pre-entries come out tomorrow, Paul, so we'll have an idea.
Yeah, I mean he's on the list of pre-entries.
Right.
That's why I was wondering.
Okay. Yeah. So, Trevor, just very quickly before I move on to Adelphi horses and some other things, I mean that had to be an incredible feeling. I remember your interview in the winner's circle, and describe your emotions after getting your first grade one.
Yeah, it was really special, to get a grade one, and it was a long time coming. I've been riding for 10 years, and I mean, there's been a lot of stakes in Maryland that I've won that were old grade ones, and look, it's to win it at Belmont Park, which is such a prestigious place, was really special too, and to win it for Graham, it was even more special. Here's a guy I rode my first race for, and he had the horse 100% ready, but he didn't have the jockey 100% ready. I'll never forget his words the next day after the race. I was completely exhausted after the race, and I came back. When I got off my horse, I finished second, and I fell. I had rubber legs. I was so weak. And the next day, he said, "Horse ran good, huh?" I said, "Yeah, horse ran really well." He said, "Yeah, I knew I had my horse fit." He said, and I thought I had my jockey fit, but I guess not."
Yeah, well, it's you guys are in incredible shape and incredible athletes. I have a ton of respect. Paul, as I allow you to ask the next question, I'm going to bring on the screen Trevor and Paul. We don't have to talk about it specifically, although I do have a question I want to ask. Paul, as you ask your next question, I'm going to bring up Equibase stats and show all of Trevor's graded stakes wins. As you go ahead and ask your next question, Paul.
Trevor, I just wanted to ask you about at some point, I think for you it was a few years ago, you make the decision after really dominating in Maryland to make that big move to New York. Tell me about that decision and how the transition went. We know it's obviously going well now, but tell us a little bit about that transition to probably the best racing circuit in the world.
Yeah, look, I came to New York my first year actually in the winter of 2017 to 2018. I came here with Steve Russian, and I had a good winter. And after that, I just kind of struggled through Belmont, and I was devastated, and I didn't want to leave. I and I wanted to quit after that, really. I said, well, if I can't make it here in New York and I can't follow my dreams, then I just don't want to ride at all. And I went back to Maryland, and I got my confidence back, and I said, you know what, maybe this is just how it's going to be. Maybe I'll just ride, and maybe a few more years I'll retire down the road. Um, and a couple more years later, I came back in 2020 during the pandemic, and at that time I was just it came to the point where in Maryland, uh, I had so much business in the spring, summer, and fall. All my business would leave. A lot of it would leave in the wintertime, and I just didn't have the cheaper caliber of horses anymore. And I wasn't riding for the cheaper connections, and a lot of my clients went to Florida, and it kind of all slowed down. And I said, let me take the shot and just go to New York for the winter. I kind of wanted to take some time away and just see if I could do it again. And I kind of believed that, hey, maybe I can do it. And I built some confidence, and I served my time a little bit during 2020. It was like I started the meet. I was 1 for 40. And then a couple of guys got hurt. Lascano had to go get surgery. Dylan ended up getting hurt. Another kid, Vargas, ended up getting hurt. And I just said, you know what? Here's my opportunity. I'm going to do the best I can with it. I'm going to improve myself as a rider. I'm going to improve myself as an athlete. And I'm going to say to myself, you know what? If I don't make it this time, then I'm going to say to myself, okay, I did everything I could to make it. And if I'm just not good enough, or if I just can't, get the business, then that's fine. I'll go home. And I did. I made it. I did really good in the wintertime, and then it followed through with the Belmont spring meet. And then I had an opportunity after I won the Gotham to go out to California. And I think that decision was to go to California, to where there wasn't, it's still a very good, strong colony, California, of riders, but it wasn't so deep as New York. And I thought maybe I could squeeze my way in there and be a top rider there. Where here, there's so many young guys that are top riders, and it's just going to take maybe a little bit longer for me to try and get to that spot. As I've seen guys, I mean, even now, it's taken some guys 8 to 10 years to get to where they are now. So I kind of made that move, and it didn't work, and I took the chance, and I said to myself, I don't want to look back and say, hey, I regretted not going to California. Maybe that was a stone that would have been really big to open. And I came back. I had ankle surgery. I did a little work on my ankle. It had some chips in my ankle. So I took the time, got healthy, and came back last winter. And I hooked up with my agent now, Joe Migliore. And we had a knockout winner. We finished second in the standings.
Yeah,
Terrific.
I mean, quite the journey. I know we probably don't want to talk about California too much, but I do want to say that what your stats were in California. And the reason I want to do that, Trevor, is obviously not to knock you down, but just to show you how tough a competitor you are and just how hard this game is. You went to California and you were 1 for 48 at San Anita and 5 for 94 at Del Mar. I have to ask you, what did you learn out there? Were the jockey styles different? I'm sure, although it was frustrating, you didn't have a lot of wins. You certainly should have. I'm assuming you did take some things back home out east from what you learned in California.
Yeah, look, I didn't learn so much riding, but I learned so much probably about myself, and um, I was kind of bummed too. I didn't take off there, but I just thought to myself, okay, well, this is not where I'm supposed to be. They have it's a really big quarter horse mentality there, very everybody's speedy. And I just realized that wasn't me. I'm not that kind of rider to where I get run out of horses by riding a horse from gate to wire, especially burning them up on the front end.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. It was a great experience, and I just learned a lot about myself. And look, I met some really great people and good connections, and it's benefited. It's definitely benefited me for the long haul.
Well, let's talk about the transition to New York and specifically with Adelphi. I do my research. I know Paul did as well. Joe Migliore and yourself, you guys are about the same age, and I know Joe's had some very special things going on with his family recently that I'm sure people, when they watch this, will hear about through Twitter and other avenues. Fantastic family, obviously. His father is well known. Um, Joe's mother is into horse racing as well. Talk about your relationship with Joe Migliore and how that brought you to Adelphi Racing.
Yeah, look, Joey, he's been he's done a great job. He really has. He's impressed me. And when I was in California, he got whiff that I was coming back, and he ended up calling me when I was out there and wanting to be my agent. And I thought, I hung up from the phone and I said to my wife, there's no way I could take an agent that's never been an agent before.
Right.
Like, that would just be, that would just be stupid, right?
Pretty ballsy.
Right. And I said to my wife, I said, this is a move now is like, I can't screw this move up. This is going to be a ride or die thing. I have to make the right decision. And after weighing all my options, I thought to myself, man, it might be the right thing. And look, it's paid off big time. I took a big risk in Joey, and he proved himself like he promised. And he worked hard. He was dedicated, and he did it. He proved a lot of people wrong, and a lot of people told me that I was absolutely insane. And I said, you know what? I definitely am insane, but I had faith in it. I did, and so did he. And we both knew we were going to do whatever it took to make it. So, we did it.
I hope Richie was not the guy that said you're insane.
No.
Paul, go ahead.
Speaking of New York, Trevor, we can't have you on without talking about we all owe you a debt of gratitude for you and your wife getting rid of the archaic rule that New York had with the automatic coupling of entries. My opinion is that the era of coupled entries should go away for everyone, not just married couples. But for people who don't know, right, it was if you two were in the same race, your horses automatically had to be coupled, correct?
Yes.
And that, if you want, you used the word insane a few minutes ago. That is insane. And you guys were pretty outspoken about probably more Katie than you. And you know what? You guys fought the law and you won. You got it changed. So tell a little bit about that process.
I give all the credit to my wife, Katie.
Good answer, Trevor. Good answer. For not just for this question. That's a good answer to a lot of questions.
That's right. Absolutely. I've learned that over the past few years now. But really, honestly, I have to give her all the credit because for me, I was a little shocked by it, and she was the one that really opened up the can, and I was kind of more passive to where I kind of was like, man, I don't know how much I want to dig into this. And I need to do my job. I need to focus on doing my job and trying to make it here. And look, I'm really proud of her. I wish maybe back then I was a little bit more supportive, but I was scared. And I think that she did a great job, and it just proved, to a lot of people that things can be changed, rules can be changed, and with everybody's support, we are both very thankful and appreciative of all that.
Trevor, talk a little bit about your relationship now with Adelphi Racing, obviously through Joe Migliore. I know we talked before we went on air about Matt Cutera, who does a fantastic job. Adelphi has been on a roll lately. Yours truly has a piece of Funny How, which we're going to talk about, the filly that's now won 2 races in a row. Talk about your experiences with Matt Cutera and specifically the partners at Adelphi Racing Club.
Yeah, look, I'm very appreciative of everybody in Adelphi Racing Club, especially Matt Cutera, who's been a huge supporter. And I couldn't be, like I said, more appreciative. We've had a good run. We've had a few winners, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Well, it's very competitive in New York. Saratoga, as we mentioned, was tough. You finished 14th in the standings with 6 wins, but you were 30% in the money. And I bet Saratoga all the time, as does Paul. So you had a lot of nibbles, so to speak. You just hard to get in the winner's circle, but it's a very difficult meet. And you're 9th right now in the standings at Belmont at Aqueduct. You've already earned almost as much money at the Belmont Aqueduct meet as you have at Saratoga. So it just goes to show you how difficult Saratoga is. Can you talk? I'm going to bring up Funny How here, and we're going to talk about her last race, but talk about that first Saratoga meet for yourself.
Yeah, Saratoga was really tough, and it was a long summer. We were traveling back and forth between Saratoga and Colonial Downs. We were riding 7 days a week, and it was just a lot. And look, we did really good. We did well at Colonial, and we won some stakes down there. And look, I mean, Saratoga is a really tough place, and I wish I was able to spend a little bit more time on it, which I will probably do next year, and not so much Colonial on the off days, but really try and focus on Saratoga. And look, it's hard. I lost a little bit of confidence at Saratoga meet, and I got bumped around a lot. I got a lot of seconds, and there were a few really tough beats, and the game was testing us. And
sure.
I just was trying to stay positive and trying to get through the meet. And now I kind of know what to expect for next year.
Well, we appreciate your honesty because, I mean, confidence, Paul, is important in, any professional athlete, basketball, football, and especially in horse racing. You start losing a little bit, Paul, and all of a sudden you start questioning yourself, right?
Well, absolutely. Any sport, and it's. I think, Trevor, it's got to be exacerbated. We talked at the beginning about the quality of the room up there, and you're not going to stumble into a win at Saratoga because someone else has given a bad ride to a horse. It's so competitive. But hey, I remember. I think it was 3 years ago. We've seen what Tyler Gaffalione has done the last few years, and leading rider in Kentucky. And I remember distinctly talking to him in the winner's circle at Saratoga after a stakes. He was like 1 for 40 something. I think that was 2019. At that time, I think it was his second win of the meet in his 40 second something mount, whatever it was. So, I mean, but I do, you mentioned, Trevor, the lack of confidence. If you're going to lose your confidence, I would think it could happen a lot faster up there than, the Aqueduct Winter Meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like a guy like Tyler in the beginning of the meet, that made me feel a little bit better, where he came off such a highlight Churchill, and he had a struggle to the beginning of the meet there at Saratoga. And even a guy like Pratt struggled to get going
Yep.
at first. And he really, the last month, I mean, he fired a lot of wins that last month, but it really made me realize, like, wow, like, this guy's not doing that great. That guy's not. And it's like, if these guys who have been here and they're well established, and some of them guys were in the Hall of Fame, and they didn't have that many wins either. It's just like, wow, it just goes to show how insanely tough it is.
Trevor, let's talk about Funny How, and then we'll get to our 10-minute. We'll talk about a few other quick mentions to other Adelphi horses, and then we'll get to our 10 minutes to post segment. Again, we're here with Trevor McCarthy. Really appreciate you coming on to the HHH Racing podcast tonight, Trevor. Here's Funny How. I was sitting at home. Like I said, I have a very small piece of this horse. Funny How's the one. This is her last win. You can see her on the rail here. I'm gonna this is without sound, so there's no announcer here. You can talk about as the race goes through. You just got a wonderful trip. Sort of tipped out into the 3-path, into the stretch, found a hole, and went on. Talk about Funny How and how good you think this New York bred filly could be as we go ahead and roll the tape here.
Yeah, look, I mean, she got a great position. There was plenty of speed in the race, and I had her down on the inside where it wasn't the best place to be, but that's where we drew. And I just wanted to keep her as clean as I could for a while. And I knew the 2-horse was going to take me a long way, but I knew come mid-turn that I had to get outside into the better part of the track. And here I'm kind of debating on whether I should go out or slip through. And right here, it just opened up like the Red Sea. That I said, okay, I can slip through and really get off the rail and get onto a better part of the track. And, when I really threw a couple of crosses at her and gave her some encouragement with the riding crop, she really finished strong, and she really improved well. I thought, the 6.5 would be a benefit for her, and it was. I mean, she had a really nice gallop out too, and there's a bright future for this filly.
Yeah, she gallops. I like her reach, Trevor. I mean, you're obviously know a lot more in horse racing than I do, but I like the way that she galloped out. I like the way that she reaches out. She's competitive, and for a late, sort of late 3-year-old, she's still developing and has more upside, I think. And I talked to Matthew Terr on Saturday after the races, and I mentioned to him, and I'm curious to see what Ray Handel does, who we haven't talked about yet, but Ray Handel does a tremendous job with his barn as well. I think this filly could stretch out maybe all the way up to a 1-turn mile. What's your thought?
I think so too. I think she might be able to get a mile. It's just right now she's running good at these sprint races. She's got great tactical speed, and look, I'll leave it up to you guys, Matt and Ray, to kind of make the decision on that. But for going forward, but I think she's in really good form right now. And it's funny, my wife gallops her every day. She works for Ray, and she comes home every day. Actually, she came home this morning and she said she jogged her, and she said she came out of that race really well. So, everything looks good so far.
Well, we're very excited about Funny How, and just very quickly, I also want to mention, because we have a lot of partners and people interested in Adelphi watching the show. You've ridden Community Adjusted, who's a nice turf horse that goes long, that's had some nice wins as well. That's very consistent, runs in the high 70s, low 80s. Allowance Company, and then a very fast a horse called Drink the Wind, who's had some success. So certainly Ray Handel, Matthew Terr, Joe Migliore, the Adelphi crew has put you in some nice spots to get some wins or some placings.
Absolutely, and I'm very fortunate.
Absolutely. Paul, any other quick questions before we get to our 10 minutes post?
No, and this may be covered in the 10 minutes post, but we talked off air, Trevor. You married into quite the racing family, from your father-in-law, who was a Terrific jockey. To your wife, of course, and as I mentioned, back from her Suffolk Downs days, one of my favorite people in racing, Jackie Davis. I went back and dug up. I wrote a story on her going into opening day at Suffolk Downs, and I just thought it was like 6, 7, 8 years ago. I went back and found it before we came on the air, 2011, 11 years ago. But she was actually a top three. She was a top 3 jockey at Suffolk Downs, and I think one of the most pleasant people I've ever come across. And of course, Dylan is a terrific jockey. I know Edmund is a trainer. So I think we know what's talked about at the Thanksgiving table, I guess.
Yeah, I would say every night horse racing.
Absolutely.
And you and Katie have an up-and-coming jockey in your stable, right?
Absolutely. I hope she's as tall as me, or maybe even taller, so she's not a jockey. My wife wants her to be a jockey, and I don't. So it's a little dispute.
Paul, that Thanksgiving dinner always tastes well because Trevor currently has $8.266 million in earnings in this year, which is his actually his third highest ever, Trevor. But I got a feeling you're going to get very close to your highest earnings. And Paul, if anyone knows about how much, what percent a jockey earns off those earnings, Trevor's doing just fine. I think Thanksgiving dinner is going to taste real well, and I know you got more wins in you, Trevor, the rest of this year. Let's go to our fun segment to end the show, Trevor, and it is called 10 Minutes to Post. 10 Minutes to Post. Trevor, this is going to be 10 fun rapid fire questions. They could be about anything. You'll be surprised. You don't know. You can take 10 seconds to answer them. You can take 2 minutes. It's really completely up to you. This has been a very popular segment we have on your show. The questions will be on the bottom of the screen, Trevor, and Paul and I are going to alternate asking the questions. Are you ready for 10 minutes to post, Trevor? All right, here we go. First question. What was the first moment you fell in love with horses or horse racing?
First moment would have to be watching my father ride, just remembering him riding, and that's all I wanted to do right from that start. Whatever he did, I wanted to do, and I couldn't wait to do it. I'd go to preschool across the street from Delaware Park. There was a preschool there, and as soon as I got out of preschool, I went over to the track with my mother, and we rooted on my dad, and I loved every second of it.
Beautiful. Paul?
Preferences, turf, dirt, route, sprint.
I'm going to do turf sprint is probably my favorite.
There you go, Howard. Howard can't figure those races out, so.
I hate to interrupt, but Paul knows why, Trevor. By far, and I've been handicapping for 30 years, by far my least favorite race to handicap are turf sprints, only because, and you can talk about this if you'd like or not, it just feels like any little mistake, any stumble, any quite steady, and in a turf sprint specifically, especially going 5, it's just almost impossible to recover from that.
Yeah, the 5/8 is really tough. I mean, that is tough, but more the 5.5, 6 I like. 7/8 at Belmont's really fun too, and I love an inside draw turf sprint.
Excellent.
You're able to shoot out of there a little bit, get some position, save ground, and look, I just feel like it's more of a spread out race, so you can always kind of follow somebody and get through somewhere, and I don't know. I just enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. I look forward to it, and there's nothing better than sitting in the pocket when you're loaded on the turf and waiting for that seam to open and just shoot for it. It's
Trevor, I got 2 quick questions that come to mind, Paul. This is outside of the 10 minutes to post, but we have such a great opportunity to talk to a jockey. 2 quick questions. One, did you have a chance to ride down the hill 6.5 at Santa Anita when you were there? Number 1. Oh, you didn't. That's too bad.
They weren't using it, right?
Yeah,
they weren't using it. That's right, because of the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? And number 2, Trevor, how in depth do you look at the PPs before the race of other horses and other jockeys? You talk about following horses. Isn't it important for jockeys to know which horses / which jockeys to follow within a race so you don't get shuffled back or caught behind?
Absolutely. Well, first question. Yeah, I did not ride it downhill, which I was pretty devastated about. But they weren't riding that race when I was out there, and actually after I left, they started riding it back in the fall. So it was just a bit unfortunate. But Maybe I'll get the chance to do it one day. And second question is, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank now. Second question.
Reading the PPs so you know
Yes,
which jockeys
PPs,
slash
right.
horses to follow, especially in turf racing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just dirt racing as well. It's every race. You're watching replays, and sometimes you watch replays of other horses too that are in the race, and you definitely have to pay attention on who to follow and who's going to be around you, and who you don't want to follow is most important as well. And look, I handicap. We get to the track around 10:30, and post time's 12:30. So I get in there, I lose some weight, and then I'll stretch and warm up for a little bit, and then I like to dissect the program, the PPs, and even the night before or even the morning of, I'll kind of dig into it and maybe watch a couple replays in between working horses, and maybe go over and see some trainers and talk strategy about this afternoon's race. And yeah, I definitely dig deep in it.
Trevor, the best jocks room slash facilities in the country.
I've been to a couple really rough jock rooms, and I've been to a couple really nice jock rooms. It's a shame. I thought Arlington really had a nice jock room when I was there. The Gulfstream Park's got a really nice jock room. It's basically new. Um,
Yeah,
here in New York, Saratoga, their jock room is nice. Belmont's is nice too, Aqueduct, but they're old. They're old, but they're nice.
sure.
And yeah, so I'd have to give it to Arlington.
Trevor, I live, God rest its soul, I live 20 minutes away from Arlington. It's my home track.
Oh,
It's really a shame. It's just a beautiful. I hate to say was. It is a beautiful facility. Paul, you got the next question.
Ooh, who's the biggest trash talking jockey? We should have guesses on this, but go ahead.
Whether it be during the race or in the jocks room, either one.
yeah. I mean, I think a guy who talks a lot of trash is Kendrick Carmouche, but he means it in a good way.
Yeah,
He's always joking around, having fun, and trash talking, or just messing around. So we have a lot of fun.
he seems like a great guy.
He
Next
is.
question. The most funny or humorous thing said to you from a fan on your way back to the jocks room after a race. Is there anything? And this
This,
doesn't have to be PG. You can say
yeah,
whatever you want to
this
say.
has to be at Saratoga going through the crowd.
You know what? It's not. If anything, it's at Aqueduct, and that's a rough crowd at Aqueduct. And I had the other day. I had a guy yell down to me, "Get the fuck out of here and go to Finger Lakes." I've heard it all. I've heard you'll never be good as your father. Go home. And I mean, I've heard so many that I just tend to even block it out now. I don't even pay attention
Yeah.
to it.
Well, those don't sound funny or humorous, but obviously very memorable for sure.
Yeah,
You
I've had
just
some.
gotta brush that off, right? Just
Yeah,
brush that
brush
off
it
and move
off,
on.
and I've had some pretty nasty social media messages as well that were probably pretty sickening.
That's too
Guys
bad.
saying, we hope you get paralyzed and this and
Oh,
that, and it's
jeez.
like, man, you guys are tough, man. You guys are tough.
Man, Trevor, just ignore all that crap. HR Twitter, better known as horse racing Twitter, can be a lot of fun. It could also be a complete cesspool. So I would highly recommend you stay away from it in general. Next question
Absolutely.
goes to you, Paul.
What's the first suggestion you have to the Jockeys Guild to improve safety for the riders?
Yeah, look, I've worked a little bit with the Jockeys Guild. I like to kind of get involved with that, and I think a lot of the safety has changed big time already. Uh, if anything, it's safer now than when I started. It's way more safer now than when I started 10 years ago. I think the Jockeys Guild has done a great job. If anything, sometimes, I just wish we were a little bit more stronger when it comes to the turf racing. Um, Sometimes the course can get really bad, and, we get some pressure from management to race on it, probably when we shouldn't be racing. But look, I think everybody still has the idea to look out for one another out there on a bad course, and that's where we kind of all come together and stick together on that end.
That's interesting. Trevor, which hurts a jockey more, getting suspended for several days or a big fine?
I would say a suspension hurts the most. This is where you lose winners, you lose horses, and look, some of those horses could run good and can win, and maybe they could win a stake and they go on and be a good horse, or maybe you lose a really good maiden and he goes on to be a good horse, and where a fine, fine hurts, but it might not hurt as bad as watching a horse all year doing something really well. So I'll say the suspension.
All right, we got 3 more questions, Trevor. Again, appreciate your time. Paul?
Howard, I was going to ask this question outside of the 10 minutes to post, believe it or not.
I believe it.
So hats off to you, Howard, for a good question. Which jockey has given you the best advice, and what did he or she say?
I'd have to say a jockey right now who's giving really good advice would be Joe Rosario. And he always just says to just go out there and don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to enjoy it. But my dad, his biggest advice was don't ever be afraid to lose. And, I think that's been a really good thing for me to, riding horses and just saying, okay, I'm gonna set a good trip, or I'm gonna set a trip that I think that I can win. And look, sometimes you get through, sometimes you don't get through, and you just have to have confidence, and you can't be afraid to lose.
Joel seems pretty even keeled, Trevor, in an intense sport, and I know you guys are athletes and you get fired up to a degree, but he seems to be among the most even keeled guys from, well, not too far, but from afar. Is that fair?
I think he is the most calm person I've ever met. I think nothing can get to that guy. I've seen Asmussen tear him apart. I've seen other guys, tear him apart, fans, and Joel will come back in the room with a smile on his face, and he likes to dance, he likes to joke around, and yeah, and it's just like, how does that guy? How does he do that? How does he? Somebody just ripped him a new one, saying that he gave a horse a bad ride, and he's happy as can be, but he's just so good at just turning the page and forgetting about it. And he'll go out there and ride the next race, and he'll do the same thing. He'll sit down on the fence, he'll get through somewhere, and he'll ride an incredible race. And you just see it in his riding as well, how just laid back and cool, calm, and collected he is.
You might see some dance video from Trevor. I'll have to send that along to Joel Rosario, Paul. We'll put that on the show. 2 more questions, Trevor. The most talented horse you've ever ridden, and I want to just preface by saying it doesn't have to be, Highland Chief. If Highland Chief is the most talented, maybe you've gone on a horse in the morning that you thought would be amazing and didn't quite pan out. Just pure talent and ability.
Yeah, look, I feel like that I broke her maiden, and I didn't get the follow, and that was my own fault. I was just a little young at the time, and was Miss Temple City. I broke her maiden.
Oh, wow.
And Graham says to me, listen, I think you should really follow this filly. I think she's going to be good. And my agent didn't want to go to Gulfstream and ride her. He didn't want to go all the way to Gulfstream. He didn't want to take off the card at Laurel to go ride one horse at Gulfstream. And look, I ended up breaking my wrist like a few weeks later after she won in Gulfstream. And I would have lost her anyways. But it was just nice to see how great of a career she had and all the success she had. She beat the boys, and she was a pretty impressive filly.
Real nice. Paul, you got the last question of the night.
Other than the Derby or the Breeders' Cup Classic, which race would you like to win the most?
I would love to win the Dubai World Cup.
That's a good one.
That's a pretty special race, and
wouldn't have anything to do with the $10 million purse, would it, Trevor?
That might have something to do with it. But I think that's really cool. Just to even to win a race out in a different country, I think is really neat. And I've been lucky to win a race in 2 races in Canada, a stake included. And but to win the Dubai World Cup, I think that's a huge achievement.
Yeah.
Graham can help you there, Trevor.
Yeah.
You might be right. He's done it once.
Does he have another animal? Let's just ask him if he's got another animal kingdom in the barn. I'm sure he can hop on that horse. Listen, Trevor, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been an absolute joy. Sorry, my screen's a little blurry. I can see. I hope you enjoyed the show. Any final comments for especially partners of Adelphi Racing Club or any racing fans out there?
I just want to say thank you to all the fans and all the supporters, and thank you to Adelphi. And I'm looking forward to riding more for you guys and winning more races.
We look forward to that too. Paul, any final thoughts?
And I just, Trevor, Breeders' Cup, anything, or will you be in New York?
I had the chance to go ride one at the Breeders' Cup, but I think I'm going to end up staying in New York that weekend.
Well, I am coming to Aqueduct that weekend, Trevor, just to play and watch and play the live racing, so I will be down to say hello.
Good. Please, just don't yell at me like the other
No, those days are gone, Trevor. Although I've heard it. You can ask Jackie about the Suffolk Downs crowd. The Suffolk Downs crowd would be very similar to the Aqueduct crowd. Okay.
Yeah, them Boston guys are tough, man.
Oh, they're tough. But yes, I will be down to say hello and hope you have a big weekend next weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Trevor. Again, everyone, please check out the HHH Racing Podcast. We have a lot of fantastic Breeders' Cup shows coming up, depending on when you're watching this episode. And we hope, Trevor, we'll hope to have you on again when you get some more Grade 1 wins. But this time, you got to do it for Adelphi Racing.
I was just going to say,
man.
absolutely.
Good luck to you. We appreciate it. And take care. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Trevor.
Guys.
All right, bye-bye. Paul, great guy. Trevor McCarthy,
terrific.
Outstanding. And, it just shows you, how difficult this game can be. The ups, the downs, the injuries.
And the luck. The luck. How about the Gufo Highland Chief? Bye-bye, Mel. I mean, it just, the luck is incredible there. Gufo, they weren't know where he was going, and then Highland Chief ends up getting sick and going to Keeneland, and, Johnny V happened to ride him that day. It's interesting there's one other horse in the turf that I think is a possibility for Johnny, but I would think at this point, if Trevor's not going, I would think if they do run Highland Chief in the turf, Johnny V will probably stay on him.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to apologize for Paul's sound's been a little loud tonight. Paul, I'll tell yeah. When you hear it back, you'll hear. Paul, stay on for a second. I'll talk to you after the show. But anyway, we want to thank everyone for watching episode 4 of All About Adelphi. Next episodes will be coming up on the next few months regarding all things about the Adelphi Racing Club. This has been your host, Howard Kravitz, for Paul Halloran, my co-host. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Take care. Good night.